This is Courtney Young, editor at Riverhead Books, and you're listening to So Booking Cool.
Welcome to So Booking Cool. I'm Jewel B. Today I'm so thrilled because our guest has been in publishing for 12 years, but even more so, she is the lovely Courtney Young, who is the executive editor at Riverhead Books. Please give it up again for Courtney Young. Courtney, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with So Booking Cool today. I so appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
Do you recall the exact moment that you knew you had to change your major from engineering to English, and how did you feel about that transition? Was it with eagerness, or were you reluctant to make that change?
I don't recall the exact moment. I recall the moment that my parents decided they were okay with it. My dad is an engineer and was convinced that the only way I would survive in this world was as an engineer. Then I told him I would be an English major and everything would be fine. And he was very upset. But then a few weeks later, he gave me a book, actually. I think it was called something like The First Time I Got Paid for It. It was about a book of writers talking about the first time they had it published. And he kind of said, well, I guess people can make a living if they're not engineers, and I assume you'll be okay. And that was, from then on, I felt fine about the choice and the fact that my parents weren't going to abandon me.
And what did you know about Riverhead prior to working there? Because you have held like other positions at other publishers, and did you know anything at all?
I did. I had worked at Penguin for many years before I came to Riverhead. I was actually at a different imprint called Portfolio Books. And at some point I had been promoted from being an assistant at Portfolio to being an editor, but they didn't have anywhere for me to sit. So they sort of sent me over to the Riverhead area, and I sat in their intern cubicle for a while just doing my work. And they kind of adopted me, and I got to see a lot of how they worked before I actually worked there. It's a wonderful group of people. They were so friendly and really thinking about publishing in very interesting ways. And I think they just felt bad for me, and so they just sort of pretended like I worked there too. So I got to sort of try it out before I actually came back a few years later.
Wow. What was that like, that experience?
Of sitting with a group of people I didn't actually work with.
Yeah.
It was okay. You know, I accepted their pity. They were very, very welcoming, and there's a lot less pressure since I didn't actually have to publish books for them to sort of get to know them before I was actually part of the team.
Mm-hmm. And Courtney, what do you think makes a strong editorial team?
I think you can't be competitive with one another. I work with this group of people who are just very collegial, and everyone just wants everyone else to succeed. And so we spend a lot of time working very closely together to sort of help each other out and to bounce ideas off of each other. And I think that extends beyond the editorial team. We work very closely with publicity and marketing, and everyone sort of feels free to sort of walk in everyone else's office whenever and just try out ideas. It's a very open place.
So would you say like trying out ideas as well is that one of your favorite aspects of book editing?
Yeah, it's a pretty great job where what you're doing is sort of helping people develop their ideas, and it's creative work, but it's concrete work too, of sort of everything you do is in service of helping an author bring their book into the world, but there are lots of things you can do along the way to making that happen. And it's fun. We get to, there's no rule book. We can try whatever we want and just see if it works.
Speaking of authors, do you have the conversation with your authors about reviews and or awards?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Like, is it something you have to prepare an author for, maybe? To say, yeah.
Just the whole process of what happens to their book once it's out in the world.
Right.
Yeah, we're also collaborative with the authors pretty early on, so we bring them into the conversation well before their book is coming out into the world, and we sort of have a strategy of sort of, here's how we hope your book will be received, here are the sort of people we hope will be talking about it, but we want to reach other audiences too, and whoever wants to come to it will encourage that. You never know who's going to review a book. we don't, we wish we had that power, but we don't. It's always sort of a surprise. You sort of do everything you can to set a book up for success. You try to make sure you have sort of the right description for the book. You make sure you figure out exactly who should be getting the book, who is the most likely person to review it and really understand it and be excited about it and be a cheerleader for you. And obviously we're, putting our books up for all kinds of awards. We think our books are the best. We hope other people will agree. And then once the book is out, you sort of, you have what you hope, and then you see what actually happens, and you hope that the reality and the expectations are pretty close together.
Wow, Courtney. And who are some of the authors and the books that you're really excited for everyone to be introduced to?
Well, I have a couple books coming up in the next year that I can't talk about yet, since we haven't announced them. They're going to be a big surprise in January. One book I can't talk about that I'm excited about is a book by an author I worked with before, actually, at a different imprint. His name is David Epstein. He's an investigative journalist. His last book was called The Sports Gene, and it was about a very deep dive into the role that genetics actually plays in sports performance, and was this really fascinating, wide-ranging book that a lot of people came to and were really curious about. And he found the thing that people were most interested in is this idea of early specialization, the idea that if you want to be truly great at something, especially in sports, you have to start early and focus, be kind of like Tiger Woods, and just sort of get ahead of everybody else. And he kept overturning all this research that said the opposite, that the people who are actually most successful, aside from those few stories like Tiger, are generalists. They do all kinds of different things. They don't really focus very early. They go down one path and then try something else later on. And so the more he dug into this, the more he realized that there is something to be said in a really profound way about the power of generalists and how we need people who have wide interests and diverse experience, especially as the world gets more specialized. So his book is called Range, and it's this, again, fascinating tour through the research in this field that I think a lot of people are going to come to.
I love the title, and I just love the concept. Wow. Yeah. I'm so excited for that. Wow, that's a big deal.
And my other books for the year are sort of in different directions. I have a book called Skeleton Keys that's about it's a cultural history of our skeletons, so it's more of a nature and biology writing book. And I have a book called Because Internet that's about the linguistics of internet language, which is both very nerdy and very fun at the same time. So I think a lot of people will love it.
Absolutely, of course. And anything that you edit, what's not. And speaking of which, I do have to say, I got to squeeze in. What are the proudest moments of your career?
I can't just pick one. Every time a book comes out, it feels like a great accomplishment. You work so hard on every book, and regardless of how they perform, when you get to that publication date, it's just so exciting to realize that, it's actually worked out and the book exists and you made it happen.
And what is your advice to anyone right now who is thinking of writing a manuscript? They haven't done it yet.
My advice, oh geez, I feel like it's different for everybody. I don't know if I have a good answer for you. Do you have another question?
That's really, no, that's like really honest though, because is it enough to just simply have the thought of writing a manuscript that they then should go and do it?
I will say writing a book is a lot of work, and you have to be, especially on the nonfiction side, prepared to go really deep on your subject and on working on the book, and be prepared to take years to get to the outcome. It's not easy. And the hardest thing is committing to doing a book that your heart isn't in. So if you aren't sort of feeling like you have to write this book no matter what, it can be a challenging experience.
Courtney Young, everyone, I want to thank you so much again for taking the time. And are there any final thoughts that you want to add? Because I do always give my guests an opportunity to get something else off of their chest.
I can unburden myself. I just want to thank you, Jewel. This has been really fun, and I think it's a great podcast that you're doing.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, Courtney. Is there a way for people to keep up with you and your projects at all? And you can plug
Sure.
yeah, okay.
I mean, I'm tweeting about my books regularly. I'm Courtney Young on Twitter. And you can check out Riverhead Books on Twitter as well. There are lots of fun things you can find on our Twitter page and on our Instagram, which is beautiful.
Yes, and again, stay tuned for what Riverhead and what Courtney in particular has coming next. So thank you again to all the listeners, and until next time, so booking cool.